All right, so this stuff looks good. The textures look good. You're going to need to go through and hit a bunch of these areas with additional stamps and alphas, which is fine. It's a good thing to go through because you do need to know how to do a bunch of that stuff from scratch. Um, let's see, what are you sitting at here? 28 million polys. That's about right. I mean, you could try going one subdivision level higher. I don't know how much more it's going to get you out of this, but this should be fine. Yeah, there's going to be some cleanup in the ear area. In this nostril, you want to get rid of some of those things. And then you'll also notice there's spots where there's artifacts from the stretching of the Z-wrap thing. So there's little stretchy stuff here and then down in here as well that you're going to want to clean up. If you're finding that all three channels is making the displacement too intense, then it means you need to balance their intensities against each other. Keep in mind too that when you go and do your renders with subsurface scattering, the subsurface scattering will have a tendency to kind of like soften and wash details out. So even though it may look too intense in ZBrush, it may actually be okay in your render. And so once we get into next week's content and you see how to set up the test renders, you're going to be able to easily go back and forth between ZBrush and Maya and play with the intensities of things to get that render looking correct. So I think the detail work on here is looking pretty good. I think one of the things that I would adjust or make some modifications to is I think there's an opportunity um, based on the concept art to kind of chisel his features a little bit more. Things in here feel uh, a little bit more angular and a little bit more chiseled. I would try to hit some of those forms there. So like, for example, there's this really nice kind of rim light coming across and it's kind of striking the temporal line here. And then it's really kind of chiseling the cheekbone, the cheek area, and then there's some tighter, sharper angles. I would try to build a little bit of that in. So let's go just use like the regular standard brush here. And let me go to layers. Let's do, oh wait, you know what I'm gonna do just for the sake of demonstration, I'm just gonna bake all these down. Yeah, let's bake all those down. Okay, so I wanna just start to go lower intensity on this. Right, I want to start to push some of this in, build some of this form out a little bit so that it starts to chisel him a little bit. And then same thing in this cheek. I think there's a really cool opportunity to kind of like sharpen up and chisel some of these forms a little bit. Let me look at okay. And then you can see here, there's a little hint of the masseter muscle of the jaw. So you'll often get like a little bit of a bump out here and then it'll indent in a little bit. And I'm always checking this against the silhouette too to make sure that I'm just going to globally push some of this stuff in. And he definitely has like a little bit more volume underneath here. Kind of connects up in. So I'm just going to start to indent and just define some of those forms a little bit more. And then let's get some more chiseled form to that cheekbone area. And then again, this is too, getting it going in a render with some real lighting is going to help as well. You can't depend too much on just the viewport here. And then there's also going to be a little bit of a kind of a raise here and a little bit of an indent. And then he's kind of furrowing his brows a little bit in here. So I want to just hint at some of that male brow protrusion in just this area here. And then I think the same thing on the nose too. I just tighten some of these forms and just sharpen some of the transitions a little bit. So getting things a little bit more straight. And then I think from this 3/4 view, the lips are kind of flaring out too much. There's not enough volume on this upper lip. So it's going to be a mix of like building some of this out here and then using something like the move to kind of like bring some of these forms back in, and always checking it on this 3/4 view. I want to get the move topological for this. Okay, so I want to focus. Flaring out too much at the bottom here. So I think we still need a little bit more volume out here, but then taper some of this back in so it's like subtle stuff in the 3/4 view. And then I think we can lower the cheekbones. He does have high cheekbones in the reference image there, right? They feel a little bit high. I maybe want to just take these down a little bit. I think the face, I mean, he does have a long face in the reference. He's also a little bit more square in his jaw, like the jaw in this outer corner is a little bit wider. So I would actually start to bring some of that out a little bit. And then I think the mouth could go a little bit wider too. Just a little bit. All right, I'm going to reload so we can look at the difference. It's small, subtle changes, but I think it'll help overall. Let's go down to here. Yeah, it definitely helps in the lips, right? The lips now don't feel right on the original, so I think that helps. And then I also think that little bit of chiseling of his forms helps as well. So it creates a little bit of a sharper form. And as I mentioned, this stuff's going to soften and smooth out when you put subsurface on it. So you can kind of push it a little bit. And I also think that widening of the jaw and then tapering into that cheekbone, I think gives a little bit better structure in the cheek area. I still think we could take the lips back and in just a little bit to kind of reduce the amount of that flare out that they're getting. Yeah, I think now you can see how kind of like pulled forward the lip corners were and how kind of like pursed the lips are. I think this is definitely more subtle, a little bit more realistic. So yeah, I'd make a couple of those changes on your base mesh and then fill in the remainder of the detail work, and then we can start test rendering in the upcoming week. And then I think that'll reveal a lot about how much more you may need to chisel and define some of the forms in the mesh itself. But yeah, I think it's good, solid progress. Yeah, I think you're setting yourself up pretty well to proceed forward with this stuff.